I'm Beau Johnson. It's December 27th, 2025. Welcome to YesToHellWith.com. Justice is often described as timeless, but injustice is remarkably and unfortunately consistent. Across centuries, cultures, religions, and governments, the same pattern repeats, not because people are uniquely evil, but because systems once threatened prioritize survival over truth. The four corners of justice diagram measures this failure. When restraints collapse, injustice does not merely occur, it becomes inevitable. What follows are three dated historical cases separated by time and geography, yet unified by the same systemic breakdown. John Huss, the year 1415. Huss was a Czech theologian and reformer in the early 15th century Europe. His offense was not violence, not rebellion, not fraud, but speech. Huss criticized corruption within the Catholic Church, particularly the sale of indulgences, and argued that moral authority flows from truth, not from office. In 1415, he was summoned to the Council of Constance under a formal promise of safe conduct. That promise was broken. Now let's look at the four corners of justice diagram. There was no neutral inquiry. The outcome was decided before Huss arrived. Church authorities served as accusers, prosecutors, and beneficiaries of conviction. Huss was denied any meaningful defense. His writings were treated as proof of guilt. The same institution accused him, tried him, and condemned him. Huss was burned alive at the stake, not because his ideas were disproven, but because the system could not tolerate dissent without threatening its own authority. Then there is Galileo, 1633. 2 centuries later, another man stood before the same institutional architecture of the Catholic Church. Galileo did not challenge theology, he challenged cosmology. Through observation and mathematics, he demonstrated that the earth revolves around the sun. The evidence was visible, repeatable. Truth, however, was not the issue. Empirical evidence was rejected because it threatened doctrinal authority. The church prosecuted Galileo not for error, but for contradiction. He was forced to recant under threat of imprisonment and torture. Truth yielded to institutional survival. Galileo spent the rest of his life under house arrest. Centuries later, the church would admit that he was correct. Justice that arrives centuries later is not justice at all. Then there's the third example, Giles Corey, the year 1692. It's across the Atlantic to colonial Massachusetts. Giles Corey was an elderly farmer accused during the Salem witch trials. The evidence consisted of accusation, spectral claims, and hysteria. Corey understood something the system did not want acknowledged. If he pleaded, the court would seize his land. If he remained silent, the system would not lawfully proceed. So he refused to plead at all. There was no factual evidence against Corey, only fear. The state prosecuted belief rather than conduct. Silence, a lawful right, was treated as defiance. The court ordered the pressing of Corey with stones until he entered a plea. He never did. His final words were, "More weight." The system crushed him because procedure itself was threatened by non-participation. These cases span centuries, continents, religions, and legal systems. Yet the pattern is identical. When institutions feel threatened, investigation becomes confirmation. Prosecution becomes enforcement. Defense becomes illusion. Judgment becomes a foregone conclusion. The four corners of justice diagram illustrates these points. Systems are designed to preserve authority once authority is questioned. What we see today in the modern justice system is not an accident. It is a reflection of human nature. Unchecked power does not elevate character. It concentrates depravity. Control of a people does not require constant force. It requires control of thought. And control of thought requires that the combined depraved nature of those who govern be normalized, institutionalized, and imposed. The modern justice system no longer exists primarily to discover truth, to enforce truth, to perpetuate truth. It exists to maintain order, to enforce compliance, to suppress deviation. Investigation narrows to what confirms authority. Prosecution secures outcomes. Defense is tolerated only when harmless. Judgment preserves the system, not justice, not truth. This is how control operates, not through overt tyranny, but through procedure, habit, fear, and compliance, until people internalize the restraints imposed upon them. History does not warn us about monsters. It warns us about systems built by ordinary men who become monsters, whose worst instincts are allowed to prevail. And unless restrained, those systems will always demand the same thing: submission of thought in service of control, such as injustice in our time. And as always, may truth reign supreme.